see my baby there. He was lying on the long white table, so sweet, so cool, so fair. I went up to see the doctor. He's very low on his stairs. Went back to see my baby. Good God, he's still lying there.
It's an honor to meet you, Miss Norman, one of the great comedians of motion pictures. Thank you for making the time to see me. That's, I'm going to keep my distance, if that's okay. Pottinger Sanatorium is a beautiful place. I trust you're improving here. As I mentioned in my letter, I'm on assignment from the Hearst papers. People all over the nation are interested in your thoughts, Miss Norman.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely.
The small-town America takes an educated interest in the most glamorous art form of our time. You're a model of the new woman. You were ahead of the pack. You showed up the man by running your own studio and writing and directing your own pictures.
Miss Sullivan, if you're going to interview me in a sanatorium, where I probably don't have a hell of a lot longer to live, as a representative of a newspaper who, for fuck's sake, implicated me in the murder of my best friend, I'm going to have to insist on some rules. Number one, dispense with the bullshit.
Not the Hollywood way, Miss Norman.
Number two, my words will be printed verbatim. If my words are misused or their meaning shaded, my lawyers will sue you, Miss Sullivan, even after I'm dead.
Understood.
Number three, the entire world knows me, has made me. You keep calling me Miss Norman, as if I were your fucking school teacher.
All right. Well, in that case, Mabel, my first question to you is this. When William Desmond Taylor was found dead on the floor of his study on February 1st, 1922, he had on his person virtually nothing but a locket with your picture.
Yes, he had my photograph. Why does anyone care?
He was head over heels in love with you by all accounts, and you were indeed the last person to see him alive. I'm well acquainted with the whole story.
The whole story? Then you know that Bill was a brilliant director and my best friend. We read books, we dined, we had conversations about motion pictures. We exchanged ideas on Freud and Nietzsche.
Sigmund Freud and who? Could you spell that?
Bill preferred his own sex. Can you spell that, Miss Sullivan? Although he had encounters with actresses, which led to complications, I would never insert myself into such complexities. I idolized Bill for his mind and his talent. He treated me as an intellectual equal. If you can't get how a woman can have an intimate and emotional relationship with a man who prefers his own sex, I'm afraid you have no concept of the new woman, Miss Sullivan.
He was trying to help you kick a dope habit.
I'm not going down this road. 8 years ago, Mr. Hearst tried to ruin me.
Well, then let's take this opportunity to set the record straight. Bill Taylor was trying to help you kick drug addiction. Studio and crew members said you were looking increasingly tired on set, that the energy was draining out of you.
Since childhood, I have managed lung disease. They say it's tuberculosis. You can catch it from someone sneezing on you. It is going to kill me. I'm sure you can understand why I never made a fuss about it. I fell on my ass. I raced cars around a track. I flew airplanes. I dove into the ocean. I floated in hot air balloons. And for many years, I took doctor-prescribed medication. My goop, I call it. There is opium in my goop. Many people take something just like it. Actors are no different than many people who are expected to stay up working long hours, and true, I was having some difficulties, but I was not unlike thousands of people.
In the opinion of many of your friends, you were addicted to cocaine.
It's everywhere. It's even in small-town America, I hate to tell you. And the white Christian nationalist temperance movement, they always single out the actors. Bill hated the dope pushers. He even went after the ones he knew about, fed information to the LAPD, and he was tough. He said, get out and stay out, and he pushed one down a flight of stairs. He was a pretty big dealer, too. He provided cocaine to the studio chiefs.
8 years ago, all of that sounded like the perfect setup for extortion and murder. It still sounds like that today.
After the murder, everyone thought Bill was being extorted. And there were many suspects, I'm sure you remember. Mary Minter's mother, who didn't have all of the marbles. And then Bill's former butler, who just disappeared into the ether. But here's something interesting for you. There was another person. A young actress who had access to Bill and also had a history of extortion. No one talks about her. She wasn't a star. Her name was Margaret Gibson, also known as Patricia Palmer, and she used many other names as well. She worked at Bill's studio, Famous Players Lasky. And after the murder, she started getting a lot of movie parts. A year later, she was arrested for extortion in a different case.
Margaret Gibson. Okay, what's the story?
At 6 p.m., I was running an errand downtown. I received a message that Bill had called my house. He wanted me to come by and pick up some books. I had plans that evening to see Harold Lloyd's new picture. But when Bill called, I decided to go there instead. I was due on Nappy's set in the morning to start shooting.
Nappy is Matt Sennett.
Yes, short for Napoleon. So I planned to go by Bill's bungalow, pick up the books, and then head home for a long bath and an early to bed.
All this reading that you do, you're quite the secret intellectual, aren't you, Mabel? Woman dares not broadcast that in Hollywood. Doesn't earn you any points.
7 p.m., my driver pulled up to the curb. It was going to be a short visit, so I told him to wait. Bill was in a good mood mostly. He talked about the new film he was directing. We had a good time. I played some on the piano. About 7:40, he walked me to my car, blew kisses as I sped off. I only lived 7 blocks away in those days, so a few minutes later, I was in the bath. The next morning, I woke to Edna Purviance banging down my door. 10 minutes after I had left, the neighbor had heard a gunshot. Shocking. The same neighbor said that they saw somebody on his doorstep, somebody in a costume, a burglar's costume. And they said the figure was oddly misshapen, as if it was a woman in a burglar's costume.
Yes, I certainly do remember every detail of the eyewitness statement.
After the police arrived, some people from the studio were allowed to come into the crime scene, remove any evidence that might cause the studio trouble.
They always do that. I understand it. The police must protect business from the actions of a few bad actors.
The crime scene was pillaged. The police said that over half of the evidence had mysteriously gone missing. But we know the truth. Bill's case went cold because of police corruption and incompetence.
Blaming the brave men in blue, are you?
Cops do what they're paid to do, just like anyone else. And the studios pay handsomely to control the story.
Casting aspersions on the police and studio chiefs. Mabel.
The studios also pay the newspapers and the columnists. I'm sure you know all about that, Miss Sullivan. There's enough evidence to suggest that it was a woman who shot Bill, and someone he knew. Half of the bullet is strange. The pistol was fired at the base of the left rib cage. Here. The bullet traveled up his chest into his throat and stopped. It would make sense if he was embracing the person who shot him. The bullet missed his heart and his brain, so we know it wasn't a professional hit. The trigger was pulled by a petite person who was embracing Bill and kissing him at the time.
So you're suggesting an actress paid Taylor a visit wearing a burglar costume. He stood up to embrace her, and bang!
They could have brought the costume with them and put it on after the gun was shot.
A bit far-fetched. Motive?
Here's where the pushers come in. I told Bill that if he didn't stop thinking on the dealers, he might expose one of the studio bosses. The studio guys and the dealers found the perfect accomplice in a young actress with a criminal record. In an oddly misshapen burglar's costume, she would be hard to identify. And they paid her with money and movie parts. It was a smart plan. If you want to scoop, Miss Sullivan, find Margaret Gibson.
Well, she changed her name several times, and famous plays Lassie no longer exists. I'm sure this story will deflect attention away from you. Most likely will simply intensify the questions about your involvement. You don't deny being a dope. Well, and you confirm that William Desmond Taylor was exposing coke dealers. Some of them probably fed your habit, and you know many details about his personal life. And you confirm that whatever his disgusting proclivities for men, he also had affairs with women.
A twist of my words.
Oh, I'm gonna have to think about this. What is the best way to present this monologue of yours to our readers?
What's the best way to sell your fucking papers is what you mean. Oh!
You could have infected me. Damn you, now I'm gonna have to see a doctor.
And get out! Take your fake news and get out! That's the last time I... That's the last time. The last.
She may search the whole world and never find a man like me. Now that's the end. That's the end of my story. Let's have another round of booze. And if anyone should ask, please tell them I